And we're off and running on the Krueger Show Wednesday nights, about 4 minutes to 9 o'clock on the West Coast. That means it's almost midnight back east. June the 26th, 2024. Welcome to the Krueger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle. Go get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them that Krug sent you. We're also brought to you by our good friends at Sharp Corners Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're in Pacific Grove, California, 205 Cypress Avenue down there. Call Anthony Catania at 831-521-5264. And we're also brought to you by our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. Check the link in the description. Use that promo code Krug, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. Well, tonight, NBA draft, and they've now turned the NBA draft into a 2-day extravaganza. So it's round 1 on Wednesday night, round 2 on Thursday afternoon. The great Ryan Smith, an OG on the Krug Show, big basketball guy, is with us tonight. I invited the whole crew. Frank's going to be with us tomorrow night. Carl didn't get the invite until the last second. Baller is headed to Tahoe. Danny is enamored with pounding on the losing Giants. And no, I'm just joking. I don't know where Danny is, but he might jump in. He is invited. But Rye is in the house, and we're going to talk a little NBA draft. Rye, what'd you think of it? What'd you think? I think this has to be the most no-name NBA draft of our lifetime. 100%. I don't know that I needed to do. Like, I'm a basketball fan. I watched a lot of college hoop. I watched the tourney. I watched the championship week, the conference tourneys. Man, I mean, you'd have to be just the hardest of hardcore college basketball fan to know the names that were in tonight's NBA draft. This was the least known NBA draft I can ever remember.
You know what the kids would say is this draft had zero aura. It had no aura at all.
It wasn't fire. It wasn't fire.
It was not fire. God, I'm leaving a little bit frustrated, to be honest, because, I'm like talking shit with like all my Lakers fans buddies. And of course, like Dalton Connect, I mean, the guy's an electric player. He's like probably one of my favorite players in the draft. And like for everybody that was watching college basketball this year, like just a joy to watch. The guy's, I mean, it's crazy. You look at like Reed Shepherd, who I get it. He shot 50% from 3. But Reed Shepherd is 6'1" without shoes. He's got a 6'3" wingspan. He's athletic, but like basically he's got to be like a god level shooter to like really be a big time player in this league. And at best, I really think he's like kind of a good role player. What's really the difference between Dalton Connect at whatever the Lakers were at 17? Dalton Connect, yeah, he's a couple years older, but he's also like 6'6".
Right.
Like
lit it up in the tourney.
Yeah. Plays a wing. And it's just frustrating, man, because now they've got they just got all the cool white boys, man.
Well, first of all, I couldn't tell you that much about Zachary Rissacher from France.
No.
He went first. Alex Sarr, who's also from France, went second to the Wizards. Rissacher went number 1 to the Atlanta Hawks. Sarr's a big guy. He's a power forward center. Then Reed Shepherd, really, what is he? Is he a 2 guard? To me, he's 6'3.5", and he doesn't really have incredible athleticism. I was shocked that so many people are in love with Reed Shepherd, and he went 3rd overall to the Rockets. I wonder if they'll trade him or if he's, going to be just another young piece of their puzzle. But I was shocked. I mean, I watched Reed Shepherd's highlights. I watched Kentucky a few times this year. He's nice, but I don't, top 5 pick in the NBA draft. Really? I didn't see that.
Yeah. And like at times, like I don't know. I went back and forth. I mean, I loved watching that Kentucky team because I wanted them to put it all together just because having Dillingham and, oh, wow. Completely blanking now.
You're talking about the 6'7" shooter. They also have
Dillingham and who are we just talking about? Reed Shepherd. Sorry. Just having those two guys in a backcourt in college is crazy. And like there were games where like they just in clutch time and they looked incredible. And at times like Dillingham, you know, he kind of looks like a 2K my player. Like he's just out there like crossing people up, hitting threes, just like looks super shifty and wiggly. But ultimately, I kind of can't get the NCAA tournament game out of my mouth. Like he was so bad versus he got outplayed by Jake Golke. Was that the name of that kid who hit all those threes?
You talking about the guy who looked like he was 28 years old or something like that? You know, the guy with the widow's peak. Are you talking about for Oakland?
Yeah, that's what it was. It was for Oakland.
Yeah, that guy looked like he was 32 years old.
32. But it was just like Reed Shepherd was just clanking. And I don't know. He does give a little bit of like Devin Booker vibes, I guess, when Devin Booker was there. Because like they're both kind of 6-man at points. But like Devin Booker's a big ass dude. So I don't know. It's just such a weird draft.
Well, I thought you were talking about. I thought you were referring to Antonio Reeves.
Reeves.
He was the Kentucky guy that I kind of liked. As far as the guy's a dynamic shooter. I mean, he shot like 46% from three. He was one of the most efficient scorers in the country. 23, so he's a little bit older, and he's not, the unbelievable physical dynamo on defense. And I don't know I don't know if he makes anybody better, but man, that guy can shoot. Antonio Reeves.
Yeah.
I liked him, and he's still out there. I mean, he's going to go tomorrow afternoon, I guess, in round 2. It's a weird draft from a lot of perspectives. One, there were not a lot of big names. I'm as into it as any, and I did a bunch of deep dives on all these players. I watched them all, but I mean, even when I got into the highlights of the guys that went in the top 12. So if you missed it, Zachary Rasacher went from France to the Atlanta Hawks first overall. Alex Sarr, who I thought was the best player, also from France, went to the Wizards number 2. He's a center, maybe a power forward. Reed Shepherd went to Houston out of Kentucky 3. Stephen Castle from Connecticut went to San Antonio at 4. I thought that was a pretty good pick. Castle's a pretty dominating athlete, and he's a gigantic point guard. I thought that was a decent pick. Ron Holland, who played for the G League Ignite team, a wing, he went to the Pistons at 5. Another guy from France, Tijane Salon, he went 6th overall. The gigantic 7'2" UConn center went to Portland at 7. You mentioned Rob Dillingham from Kentucky. He went 8 to San Antonio. And then Zach Edey went top 10 to Memphis. There was a lot of speculation. Man, I remember looking at NBADraft.net about a month ago, and they had Zach Edey like the 10th or 11th pick of the second round. And that was a month ago. Tonight he went in the top 10. So what do you think? What's your feeling on Zach Edey? My daughter's boyfriend's a huge Purdue fan. He went to Purdue undergrad and now is going to Gonzaga Law School. And he's a big Edey fan. To me, Edey looks stiff, but you know what? When you look at that size, you got to think, man, this has got to be one of the most skilled 7'5" guys I can ever remember. 7'4", whatever he is. What do you think about Zach Edey in the pros? He's with Memphis.
Okay, I will say this. Memphis drafting him. Memphis is really good at identifying talent. Especially kind of underappreciated guys. So like it always there's certain teams that make me pause with like wanting to be a hater, but like I really just don't think Zach. I don't think his game's going to translate at all. Like he's just too slow. He's too slow.
He's
like
slow. That's the difference. Is he's to me he's too slow.
And if you want Zach Edey to be like maximized and really show off his skill set, like he kind of has to be the focal point of your offense. Like the offense has to be about getting him the ball in the paint, which is not what modern NBA teams do. And also I personally, all the free throws and stuff, like this is going to be a little disrespectful, but at times his offensive game reminds me of Rudy Gobert's offensive game, where Edey like brings the ball down, which is like, as a big man, that's like the first thing you're taught not to do is don't bring the ball down. But he's so damn tall that like in college, it doesn't really matter. So he kind of brings the ball down. There's a lot of like swiping of the ball and getting contact. And then he kind of like goes up a little bit soft. It just doesn't look like the kind of thing that's going to translate to the NBA. However, I know
it looks like you can knock the ball out of his hands too easily.
100%. I will say, I see kind of what the Grizzlies are doing because they have like some ungodly record when they have Jaren Jackson and Steven Adams playing at the same time. And so I think maybe they're like, okay, we need another big in case, with no Steven Adams, like we need another big there, a young big. I don't know.
Yeah. Mark Graves is in the house, member for 24 months. Thank you, Mark. Always a good clap for the members. Matt Ryan, he says, Miss Ryan on YouTube. Good to see you back with Larry. No Warriors trade tonight. I guess we didn't, there was an awful lot of talk, Ryan, about the Warriors making a trade. A lot of rumors tying Golden State to Paul George. It hasn't happened as of yet, but there's an awful lot of rumor out there, a lot of smoke about, whoever's going to trade for Paul George. There's a lot of talk the Knicks and the Warriors had interest that whoever was going to trade for him was going to sign him to a 4-year extension. There were a number of unsubstantiated people on Twitter saying before the draft that the Warriors had agreed to some kind of 4-year monster extension with Paul George. The deal that was reported, now I don't know if this is legit or not, but I think it was Moses Moody, Chris Paul, Kevon Looney, and like a pick. It did not include Kuminga or Wiggins in the deal. Now I don't know, that deal has not been consummated or confirmed or anything like that, but where are you on the idea of Golden State trying to go for Paul George? If the deal is what I just stated, a future one, and it's Paul and his expiring $30 million deal, and it's, Kevon Looney and Gary Payton, who both make about $8 million a year, that does add up with, that does add up on the cap as far as, I think Paul George, it's like 48 million is his number. So you got to match your 48 million. I think you got 26 or something like that from Wiggins and another 8 from Looney and another 8 or 9 for Peyton. So it gets close enough, I think, to make it happen. I don't like the idea of trading for Paul George if you're trading Kuminga. But if you're not trading Kuminga, I love the the Paul George trade, especially if it's as I just read there, but we don't have a confirmation on it. Where are you with the Warriors and Paul George? Is Paul George being added to this mix? And let's just say, for the sake of the conversation, that Kuminga is not in the trade. Does that reopen the Warriors' title window or no?
You know what? I think it kind of does.
Really?
Yeah. I
thought you were going to say no.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't think it's likely, but the interesting thing is, like, I feel like I got brainwashed into thinking like every year there's like, one or two like truly great teams that are ahead of everybody else. And, those two teams are going to meet in the finals or whatever. The West now just kind of feels like the NCAA tournament where it's all just matchup based. Like, did you think Dallas was the best? Like,
I thought Dallas was going to win the finals.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. And I told you a week or two prior to that I was pretty convinced going in. I mean, I feel like I jinxed it almost. I mean, I called you and was like, man, I love that Minnesota pick that you had, because I know you had a ticket on Minnesota. And literally from that moment on, they crapped the bed.
It's crazy. I mean, so yeah, it's kind of hard to like get your brain around it. But like in reality, like they kind of barely beat the Clippers without Kawhi. Luka didn't play great in that series. And then the OKC series, I mean, I seriously think that OKC should have won that series. Like, it was a matter of like a few shots, a few free throws here and there, and they win that series. And then obviously, if the Nuggets get past the T-Wolves, I think the Nuggets just absolutely wiped Dallas off the floor. And then it's unfortunate in the finals because I just think Dallas matched up really poorly with them, with the Celtics. I think even the Timberwolves, but definitely the Nuggets, possibly even OKC, could have pressed Boston, like pushed them to 6 or 7. And honestly, Boston, I mean, that was a very uninspiring title to me. Like, it seemed like they were trying to fold, like they were trying to sell these games, like constantly throughout the playoffs. But it's kind of like they just never really faced the team that was going to do it. So I don't know. Yeah, I kind of think it would open things up. I mean, just for maximizing Steph. I mean, Steph, I got a little bit nervous here at the end of this year. It was the first time where I actually felt like, oh crap, Steph's getting a little old. Like he's kind of struggling here, like kind of consistently towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
I think big part of that is that, well, he doesn't have the help on defense. I mean, he's a better defender now than Klay Thompson. It used to be Klay could like give him basically off nights on defense. He's a better defender right now than Klay Thompson. He's a better defender than Podziemski. He's a better defender than Chris Paul. So like he was then put in a tough spot on defense. And then on offense, aside from Draymond Green, like he was kind of their only like real ball handler and creator. So I think that just wiped his legs. And I think if you slot a Paul George in there to carry some of the offensive load, like just get Curry to the playoffs. Like if Curry's in the playoffs, I still think he can be one of the best, 4 guys in the league.
I do like Paul George if he's healthy. I think he's a relatively young 34. Like I think he probably has 3 or 4 good years left because he's not, his body is I think aging decently. He doesn't look like he's going to have recurring injuries. But I still don't want to trade Kuminga to get him. I'm kind of against, and it really sounds like Dunleavy's against the idea of trading any of the, he doesn't want to trade Pods. He doesn't want to trade Trace Jackson Davis, doesn't want to trade Moody, doesn't want to trade Kuminga. I agree with him. I don't know what they're going to be able to get or how much they're going to be able to improve without trading those guys, but I wouldn't be in a rush to trade those guys either. I just don't see what the upside is to trading, young developing players that you unearthed in the draft and look like they're foundation piece players. How would you play your hand of cards if you were Dunleavy and you ran the Warriors? I mean, they've got Steph, the dialogue. I mean, you're very familiar with the dialogue. On one hand, it's a lot of people going, how can you waste a couple of prime years of Steph Curry's Hall of Fame career? And you got to sell out and trade everything, every asset you have to get somehow Steph another chance at that 5th ring. And then the other side is like, well, you know what? The Warriors have one player, Andrew Wiggins, that's in the prime of his career. Everybody else is a year or two early or a year or two late. And if you look at Denver, if you look at OKC, if you look at Boston, if you look at just the best teams, they've got us. Each one of those teams has a solid core of at least 4 or 5 guys that are all in their prime at the same time. And I don't know that you can. How do you compete with that, right? I want the Warriors to win another title, but I almost kind of feel like they're forcing it, and that's really not the way they should go. If anything, they ought to maybe move some of their veteran pieces, like, let Klay walk, maybe move Draymond, maybe consider moving Wiggins, Looney, Peyton. I mean, anybody that's not part of the future, and try to get another couple younger pieces and see if you can do that and go that route. But there's no guarantee you're going to the playoffs or any kind of return trip to the finals by doing that either. So I don't know. What would you think is the best game plan for Golden State? Because to me, I thought Dunleavy getting Podziemski and TJD at 19 and 57 last year was an unbelievable first draft for Dunleavy. And now, he's only armed with a 52nd pick overall in this year's draft. What do you think? I mean, how do you play your hand of cards if you're Dunleavy and the Warriors?
This might be controversial, but I would get rid of Podziemski. I think
really?
Podziemski, yeah. I mean, I like Podziemski. He's spunky, all that kind of fun stuff. Like I know Fitz just loves he loves to call games when Podziemski's going off. He's great, but I'm trying to put the geometry of the team together, and it's what is Podziemski? Not to just harbor on Podziemski here, but going forward, what does Podziemski really bring? He's not that good of a shooter. He's not a guy that's oh my God, we have to respect Podziemski out there.
What he is he knows how to play the game, so he plays well off the ball for a young player. I think that's one thing that you can say. I think the other thing you can say is this guy. He can hang his hat on rebounding. I mean, the guy really is a rebounder. I mean, that's pretty amazing actually when you think about 6'3" guy from Santa Clara as a dominating rebounder, but he goes to the glass, man. He works the glass hard. So, but I hear what you're saying. He may be close to a finished product. He may not have a lot of upside. And if you're sitting around waiting on that upside, it may never come. And, his best trade value may be this offseason. I see where you're going with that.
And it's like, because I'm thinking the Warriors need to improve. They need to get bigger, longer. They need to get better defensively around Steph, and they need to surround him with more shooters. It can't literally just be Klay. Like it can't be. So, I mean, Moody's a fine, he can hit some threes, but Podziemski to me, it's like, and his defense is not that great. Like, yes, he takes a lot of charges, but he's not that great of a defender. I also just don't, I think he kind of ruffles feathers in the locker room, to be honest. Like he kind of is doing that like teacher's pet sort of situation where like he is really acting one way towards like Draymond, Steph, and Klay. And like I saw so many times this year where like Wiggins is like rolling his eyes at him or all the other guys. Like when he thinks he's the main character, if those big guys aren't out there, like he really thinks he's the main character out there. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. But my ideal thing was like I wanted
what
to
would he fetch? What does Podziemski fetch in return? That's the question.
I just think he'd be a nice thing to throw in there. That's not like I'd rather keep Moody. Like, yeah, Moody hasn't proven that much, but he's also 6'7", wing, never complains, like seemingly hits shots in big situations. Like I just see like a lot of like, yes, he could be part of the team. They need to get bigger and longer. Like I mean, it's crazy. They rolled into last year with Steph and Chris Paul. Like, it's just all these small, teeny tiny guards. And you see these teams like the Timberwolves. It's like they don't have a guy like under 6'5". Like, they have Jaden McDaniels, like 6'7", lengthiest guy on the floor, like playing the 2 guard.
Wow.
And
yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, he's a 6'3" combo guard. He's not a 6'6" combo guard.
And it's not like he's a great shooter. So he's kind of just like a B. He's like a lot of Bs. And like, I kind of think he would be like a nice little thing to sprinkle in. I really wanted Caruso. It seems like they kind of went after him, but they wanted Giddey. I mean, I think I'm going to become a low-key Knicks fan on the side because I just love what the hell they're doing. Like when I look at how to build a team around a small guard, like that's how you do it. Like,
I mean, they've got Randall, they've got Josh Hart, they've got some good role players. By the way, somebody said James Wiseman got released.
Yeah, I mean, I would roll.
Nick J says James Wiseman has been released, comes back to the Dubs on the minimum. I mean, I hope not. I really don't want to see Wiseman back. I just think that he just doesn't know how to play. I mean, and this is the NBA. You're not going to coach him how to play. If he can't play by now, I mean, and if you're not getting minutes on the lowly Pistons, come on. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what a gaffe that was, huh? I mean, there was 3 guys there. One of them they didn't get a chance at, but they chose Wiseman over Melo. How much better would the Warriors be if they had Melo instead of Wiseman?
I know.
And Melo's also had his own problems. He's been hurt. But Melo can play. Melo's a ball player.
It's just such a bummer. I mean, it kind of reminds me, like I already see it.
Or Halliburton even.
Halliburton. I see it happening to the Hawks already. Like, if I'm a Hawks fan today, like, look, I'm not going to pretend like I know all that much about these European prospects. All I know is that like the 7-foot Sar guy was like the number one guy all year. I saw a couple players like tweeting that like played in the same league as the guy who went number 1. They were like mind blown that he was going to be picked number 1. Like they was like,
it's like an Anthony Bennett year.
Yeah. And it's like
Purvis Ellison.
He's clearly like going to be a project player. And so like right now you're kind of at a point in the, like you're at the Rubicon with Trae Young right now. Like, are you going to try and make this thing work? You were in the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago. Like you'd think they'd want to add somebody that actually could like come in and help right now. This makes me think, I don't know, Trae Young, maybe he's out. Maybe they're just trying to like blow it all up. I don't know.
If you were Golden State, would you trade Wiggins? because according to the Ringer's Logan Murdoch, he reported today, citing sources, that Wiggins will be aggressively dangled in trade talks.
That would suck to be aggressively dangled.
He averaged 18-8 in the 2022 NBA Finals against the Celtics. I mean, he was a rebounding menace that 1 year in the playoffs, and he just hasn't returned to that level since. I mean, since then he's back to being the inconsistent player that he's always been. He struggles to find a consistent role. He averaged a career low and 13 points a game in 27 minutes this year. He's signed for the next 2 years. He's got a $30.2 million player option as well for the 26-27 season. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to attach first-round draft choices to move him, but I would like to see him moved.
Yeah, it's also I feel bad for him with like he's like spent time off the court doing whatever is going on the past 2 years, but like, I mean, that stuff starts to add up. Like they can't afford that again this year. I felt like for the longest time I was like holding on to the Draymond. Like I seriously, like I felt like I held on as long as like I possibly could, because I respect him so much as a player. And part of my brain still tells me they can't get it done without him and his defense, and him also being like a primary ball handler. But like he kind of like disgusted me a little bit, with his coverage, like during the like finals.
You talking about Green?
Draymond, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's like clearly he didn't absorb anything. Like it's kind of just like, it's just so tone deaf to be like making fun of Gobert, like as if Gobert's like this trash player. Like I get it, it's funny to make fun of him. It's like, dude, you literally 15 seconds into a game put that man in a headlock and cost your team an entire season because you were out for 20 games and they
dragging some like 7-footer, 8 feet. He didn't just get him in a headlock. You start pulling him by the head.
And I just kind of, I don't know. I kind of feel, it feels a little bit like Steph's downfall and Steve Kerr's downfall is going to be the loyalty. Like,
oh, I mean, the one thing, and I talked about it earlier today with Cyrus, they have to take, you got to take, Klay Thompson away from Steve Kerr. I mean, Steve Kerr with his we're passionately want Klay to return. Why? You offered him $50 million. He scoffed at it. He ain't worth $50 million. So it's like, at best, you offered him a dramatic overpay, and he did you a favor by declining it. And it's obvious to everybody that he values or measures respect all tied to dollar signs, and you don't want to pay him top dollar. So at the best, you're going to get him back, and he's going to be pissed and bitter and angry and, making himself an island unto himself. And, all these little snide remarks about what he could have gotten paid and should be paid. To me, Klay Thompson went from like one of the easiest guys to root for to one of the easiest guys to not root for. It's like he's gone from this like guy who was like, out there just playing for the love of the game to this bitter, he just comes across like a bitter old guy, even though he's not old really, but I mean, he's the ultimate chill, cool guy with, the boat and Rocco and, the CC Times. And, it's just like, he's very likable, but he's obviously this guy who's having a real problem accepting the twilight of his career. I'm not sure why, but it's impacted the rest of the team, and Kerr coaches around this guy's ego. And enough of that. I mean, I'm tired of that. I mean, I'm tired of watching them coach around his ego. He's not good enough. I mean, we're not talking about Jordan. We're talking about Klay Thompson, and he's regressed. And it's like everybody else has to come to grips with their own regression, except for this guy. I asked Kerr on 95.7 The Game last year in an interview. I was sitting in on Afternoon Drive. I said, would you ever just consider maybe bringing Klay off the bench and, maybe changing the dynamic a little bit? And he's like, oh, he like scoffed at the notion of it. And it's like, there was not a scoff worthy question, but Klay's ego is so massive that if he had addressed it on merit and actually kind of thought it through, there was probably going to be hell to pay next time he ran into Klay in the facility. So I just get the sense that, I don't know, doesn't it seem like Klay used to be the easiest, coolest, low-key, run and gun and just have fun. And now he just seems like, bitter. It's like every time I watch him, I want to play that Springsteen Glory Days song. It's like he just seems like a guy who's like trying to get it back. And it's like, it's sad. And it casts a pall, and it puts a terrible vibe around the team, I think.
I think that you hit it on the head with the vibe. I think when Klay is struggling, I mean, he still is a valuable piece because they've went ahead and built a team with no other shooter. But so like for this team, he still, I guess, he is valuable. But I mean, when he doesn't have it going, like it bums everybody out. And if it's a home game, everybody at Chase is just like, it's like the abusive dad just walks back, just got home from the bar, and it's like everyone's like, okay, all right, let's, I hope Klay, like, everyone's collectively trying to wheel in his next basket, because it really kills the vibe. I mean, in that last playing game, I mean, look, he was like 0 for 11, and like it was a huge vibe killer. And as much as like, I mean, vibes are real in sports. They just are, especially with this team. Like when things are going good, like when the vibes are high and everything's going well, that's when this team plays its best. And yeah, it's kind of an awkward thing. And you're right. Like Kerr is like, he's here to like coach. He's such a phenomenal coach, but like, he's like really a great coach of like veterans and like a team that's ready to like really go for a run. He's great at guiding a room full of egos and over a 6-month span and keeping the thing together. But is he great at developing young talent by giving them minutes and instruction? And no, I mean, like, no, he's not. Kind of like breathing life into them. Like, I got to give it to Mark Jackson. Like he really was like breathing that confidence into these guys. And like, that's what like got him to the point where they're ready. Now, Kerr has this little weird thing about like point guards. Like he doesn't trust all these guys that like aren't the veterans. But then if it's like Corey Joseph, like, please play, I need you in there I need someone in there I can trust to play, please play 35 minutes. And he's kind of like weirdly done that with Podziemski. Like Podziemski, he's like given a lot of reign. Like I thought it was a little strange, honestly, that like Podziemski was like starting pretty quickly. And it was kind of like when Wiggins started struggling a little bit, it was very quick to kind of go to Kuminga. Like, I just feel like, I don't know. I almost feel like Podziemski has like more clout with Kerr. And so, I mean, all that to say, obviously Kerr is still going to be the coach, but it does kind of feel like at some point, like Leica, Bob Myers, like they almost have to like get some of these guys out of here and force Kerr and Steph's hand. Like it doesn't have to be their
of course,
fault.
is out, right? Myers is now.
Sorry, Dunleavy. I meant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if they did trade Draymond, like because they will figure it out. Like they will figure it out. Like Steph's not going to stop competing. Steve Kerr's not going to stop competing. And
I don't want them to stop competing, but I mean, develop your roster. You've got a bunch of young players. You had 4 or 5 young players this year. And over the last couple of years, I mean, this fascination with Ty Jerome and Anthony, whatever. What was that other guy? Remember that guy from 2 years ago, the 2-way contract? Anthony Lamb.
Anthony Lamb.
I mean, the love affair with Anthony Lamb was sickening. And,
I mean, if you remember, even GP2, like, remember how much like we were all calling in 2022. We were like, can GP2 get more minutes? Like, please, God. And then, like, obviously he had ended up working out. He ended up being a huge part of the team. But he just has guys where it's like Moody, like, kind of like Moody. You make one mistake, like you're to the bench, like it's over, man.
Oh, I know.
And
look at the biggest game of the year. I mean, the play-in game against Sacramento, and I knew it was going to happen. I said it the night before.
Yeah,
I was on with Grant Napier and Jerry Reynolds, and they picked the Warriors, and I'm like, guys, you guys are not seeing this right. I go, it's Sacramento all day, every day. They're like, what? Sacramento's not playing well, and they're tired. I go, but you're not current on the Warriors. I watch the Warriors every night. They're done. I mean, I watched them. They were limping down the stretch. Steph is not Steph down the stretch. But then I knew that, with the money on the table, that Kerr would swallow the olive. And I love Kerr, but I mean, I knew that there was going to be one young player that was going to start a little slow. And because it was a playoff atmosphere and a playoff situation, that Kerr was going to wet his pants and say, oh, we can't use that guy. And who was that guy? It was Trace Jackson Davis. He came out, he played a couple minutes, he didn't look spectacular, and he got banished. Didn't play the rest of the game. For what reason? No reason. So, that's kind of, Kerr loves his vets and struggled to get any kind of consistency with the young guys. I don't know. What would you, if you were at Golden State, the dynamic. You've got Steph, you've got Joe with a very expensive arena. You've got Draymond and Klay there. Klay's a free agent. And then there's been speculation that they're going to trade all their young assets for one more veteran. And it doesn't sound like that's the route. But there's all kinds of names out there. I mean, Kevin Durant. Do you bring back Durant and try to rekindle Steph and KD and see if that gets you close to a ring? I mean, I don't see the Warriors getting in the ring discussion without help. And what I mean by that is if they build the best team they can build and are singularly focused on, next season, and they get a break or two, couple teams crash and burn, couple key injuries, make a couple teams that we think are good, suddenly, they're not thought of as highly. I think that's the only way they get it done. Otherwise, they're not going to be a top 4 seed. I mean, they're a 5 seed, they're a 6 seed, maybe if things break right. But what would you do? I mean, would you go the KD route? Try to rekindle that? You try to throw all your chips at Ainge for Markkanen in Utah? Do you like that? Is Paul George the answer? I mean, what would you do if you were Dunleavy? What would you do? Knowing you got Joe sitting there going, we're light years ahead of the rest of the NBA, and he's got this incredibly expensive arena. So the last thing he wants to do is trade all the stars away and lean on a bunch of kids and have empty seats in his opulent palace. But what do you think? What would you do?
Man. I mean, honestly, I would obviously take KD. I would take a Paul George. I would. I'd do it. As long as we don't have to give up like Kuminga and Wiggins. If they could keep, so I'm just trying to think they need to have more length. And if they get Paul George, then Klay, it's nice if he stays. It's okay if he goes. I don't know. I got to just bring it up again. I'm kind of obsessed with this Knicks roster. In terms of looking at Brunson. Brunson is a 6-foot guard. I still don't think he's as good as Steph Curry right now. But he's not a good defender. But that team they built around him, Josh Hart. I mean, OG and Mikal Bridges is alarming. That's they can both turn off the water for any of the great players in this league. And Thibodeau running that system, I don't know. I'm just
trying to. They want to trade Mitchell Robinson away.
Yeah.
Are they going to re-sign Hartenstein? I guess.
I mean, how about what are the Warriors like? I mean, the Warriors aren't going to get anything impactful at 50, but I will say the interesting thing about this draft is there's still guys out there that if you told me that they got taken at 15, I would totally thought that's possible. I mean, I think Filipowski would be.
I was about to talk about him. Yeah, I mean, Filipowski's that's a good one. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Filipowski. I mean, okay, so these are some of the best players that are still left. Kyle Filipowski from Duke. He's a 6'10" power player who's a stretch 4, stretch 5. He's a good passer. He's a decent shooter. He's kind of an underwhelming rebounder and defender. He's not the greatest athlete. He did not test out particularly well in Chicago, but he's a passionate big man who's about 6'11", who can pass the ball.
And honestly, I wanted to hate him because of the Duke thing. And he there was that thing at half court during the year when there was the fans rushing the floor and he flopped, he got injured. I wanted him to kind of be like a little bit of a pussy because he goes to Duke. But honestly, that Houston game, like he made me a fan. He was so tough in that Houston game. And I really think he's going to be like a very solid NBA player.
Who does he remind you of? Anybody? I mean, he's a stretch four who needs to work on his shot. The shot's not quite there, but
it's not quite there, but it's something. I mean, I'm confident with it. I mean, I'm just thinking about like who's their guy this year? Saric. I mean,
to me, he reminds me a little bit of a Santi Aldama, you know, who can shoot the rock, you know, better than Filipowski. But as far as big man, knows how to play, knows how to make other guys better. You know, has got high basketball IQ.
He's a good passer.
Neither guy has a lot of vert or a lot of jumping ability. They're both kind of ground bound beneath the rim players. But I like Filipowski a lot. And to me, his teammate, McLean, was one of my favorite players in the draft as well. McLean, you know, went to the Sixers at 16, and I was a little bit surprised. Now, Sacramento had the 13th pick overall. They took Devin Carter, who's a tremendous two-way player. He's a defender. He's an athlete. He's got crazy length. Devin Carter plays, you know, he's a point guard, but he's big and he can defend multiple positions. He's a great athlete. I thought he was one of the most underrated players in the entire draft, the kid out of Providence. So the Kings go Devin Carter at 13, but they passed on Jared McCain, who's from Sacramento. Now, I realize Jared McCain had a 25-inch vert, but that is a phenomenal shooter. I mean, Jared McCain is also kind of one of these, is he a 1? Is he a 2? He's kind of an undersized 2. He's not really a pure 1. He's more of a 2 guard than a point guard. But the guy can flat out shoot it. I mean, we're talking about 40% from 3, 90% from the foul line. I was really surprised. Now, granted, they re-signed, you know, their guard, the 2 guard themselves, Sacramento. Malik Monk. They re-signed him, so maybe this guy's kind of redundant. But man, you're going to pass on a guy who shoots the ball as well as Jared McCain, who's from Sacramento. When you're the Sacramento Kings, I mean, he would have been an unbelievably popular player for them. I mean, and to pass him up to go with Devin Carter. Now, I like Devin Carter. Don't get me wrong. But man, I think the Sixers, to me, the big winners tonight. I mean, I don't know a lot about, you know, the France guys. I mean, I don't claim to watch French basketball, but I like the Spurs getting Steven Castle. I thought that was a really nice pickup. I'm not sure if I believe in Zach Edey in the NBA. A couple guys in the chat were asking, what do you think of Cody Williams from Colorado, who went to Utah with the 10th pick overall? He had a pretty good year. Do you like Cody Williams?
Yeah, he had a pretty good year. I don't know. I feel like I watched him a few times and
weren't overwhelmed. I mean, that's this whole draft is.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I guess it was because he was like a top 10 mocked guy, and in my mind, like I know what a top 10 mocked guy looks like. He's got the measurables, but then in this draft, I guess, like, I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense that he got drafted about where he got drafted.
So then go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, one thing that I'm seeing is like a huge advantage, and where like all the teams that I really liked what they did is it's these teams that are so big already. Like they have like their like centerpieces are massive. So like the Timberwolves, like they have so many big guys with great defense and length. I mean, the Spurs with Wembanyama, these kind of team, even like the Lakers, you know, they're a big team. And what that allows you to have is like you actually can like take like the Sixers. You can take like the Jared McCain. You can take the Steven
best player available.
Like I mean, Timberwolves took 2 guys, right? They got Dillingham and the crazy scorer from Tennessee. Or I mean, not Tennessee, Illinois, I think.
What
was his name?
He went Shannon. Yeah, towards the end of the first round, 27th overall, Terrence Shannon Jr. Yeah, that was a nice pickup too. Somebody's like, Krug's getting a best actor pretending to know these college basketball players. I don't know the international guys, but I do watch a lot of college basketball. So I do actually know these players pretty well. I would say this: the teams that I thought did really well. One, Sacramento getting Devin Carter, good player for sure. Miami always does a good job. They got the Indiana big man, Ware. That I think he's nice. I mean, especially in their system where it seems like Miami always gets their guys to play really hard. I love the Sixers getting Jared McCain at 16. The Lakers getting Dalton Connect at 17. I think that was a steal. I kind of liked New Orleans getting the gigantic center from Baylor, Yves Missy, the 6'11" shot blocker, rim protector. And I kind of liked Phoenix getting Deron Holmes out of Dayton, who's kind of a skilled power forward. Milwaukee, I thought, got a really underrated player in AJ Johnson, who's very raw. But I mean, if there's a redraft, Ryan, in 5 years, AJ Johnson's going to go way higher than 23.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. So I thought Bucks had a pretty decent draft. And then I don't know much about the guy the Knicks got, but he looks like an athlete. Keyshawn George from Miami.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Don't know much about him. But to me, the best pick, and I was talking to my nephew about it. The Celtics at 30 got Baylor Shireman. And if you watch college basketball, Baylor Shireman is kind of the Klay Thompson of college hoop. I mean, he's a 6'7" two guard who just has beautiful form. And, he's money in the mid range, and he's money from beyond the arc, and he's, legit 6'7". He went to Chicago. He was one of the most impressive players at the Chicago pre-draft camp. And he fell to 30, and the Celtics wind up getting him. I don't know how much you watched of Creighton this year with Kalkbrenner and Shireman, but Shireman, I mean, there was, like, in the tournament when they got involved in some close games, they just stopped even going to anybody else, and they just were creating like open looks for Shireman in the mid range, and he was just knocking every single one of them down. I mean, that guy there's good shooters, great shooters, and then there's Klay Thompson type shooters. This guy's a Klay Thompson type shooter.
Yeah. I mean, he's like perfect guy to go on the Celtics bench. Right.
Right.
He's kind of another one of these guys. I mean,
like
that's
Hauser.
That's kind of like what this draft is it's like, there's a lot of guys that it's like, I could see that player being a really, really good, important seventh man on a really good team that's competing. Or contending. And like, that's like what he is. But honestly, I'm not really sure, like, that might be what Reed Shepherd is. Like, so the difference, it's not like that huge. It's just that he's a little older. And I do think that there is a little bit of like a market, I don't know what the right word is, but basically, yeah, like I think that you can get value with the Grizzlies have been doing this a lot. You can get great value with older players, and you can get great value with players whose wingspan is not that long.
The thing about this draft that's so exciting, if you're a team that is looking to, somehow get ahead of your competition. It used to be in the 80s that maybe there was 20 good players in an NBA draft. That's probably too many, but let's just say for the sake of the conversation, there's 20 good players. Those players went like 1 through 25. Like maybe there would be like 4 or 5 guys that were picked that weren't any good along the way. But basically the top 20 players went in the first 25 picks. But the way the draft is now, where you got some guys coming from Sweden, some guys playing for the G League Ignite, some teams played 1 year in college, some guys are transferring from this place to that place, and everybody's got, some guys are playing mid-major, and there was a guy drafted, or there's a guy on the board that's hasn't been drafted yet, named Jonathan Mogbo, who played for USF, for crying out loud, and he's on the board. So you got all these different players, all these different backgrounds. Now, if there's 20 good players in the draft, they probably go like 1 through 10, but then the rest of the 60 picks, they're kind of like evenly distributed throughout the draft. It's like nobody really knows. Like Baylor Shireman is going to be one of the better players in this NBA draft. He just went 30th. And, for the Warriors in round 2, Kyle Filipowski might be there. I mean, they got a whole round to go. I'll tell you the other guy that I really, really kind of like. I like the UCLA big man from Nigeria, Adam Bona. I don't know if you watched him down there. I know you're down in Southern Cal, but Adam Bona's 6'8", 235 pounds, 7'1" wingspan, and just has a ridiculous shot blocking, run the floor shot blocker. Now, there's not a whole lot of outside shot there. I mean, he's a 5, right? He's a rim runner. He's a great shot blocker, rim runner, rim protector. Not a lot of face-up game, no three-point shot to speak of, but he's exciting, incredible athlete. There's a Spanish point guard named Juan Nunez who's like 6'6", who's really fun to watch. He's still on the board. There's Cameron Christie from Minnesota, who's a pretty good shooter in his own right, 2 guard. There's a kid from Sweden named Bobby Klintman, who's 6'10", who's very, very skilled.
Yeah, what's his deal?
He to me, it's just the fact that he's coming from Sweden. I mean, he's a huge, long forward who can finish in transition. He's a great athlete. I mean, we're talking about 6'9". He's a little skinny. He's about 210 pounds. This guy needs to go muscle up for the next year or two. You know what I mean? And he only played 1 college season, and he played in a rotation. So, it's like then he went to Australia and played there, and he's got size. He's a shooter. He's mobile, but it's a little bit of a projection. He's going to transition from Sweden to the NBA. But I mean, there's other guys. Harrison Ingram, who played at Stanford, transferred to North Carolina. Pretty interesting shooter. What do you think of the Warriors? Have this guy's brother, but what do you think of Cam Spencer from Connecticut?
Oh, I was just gonna say
he's not an NBA body. I mean, he's like 6'4", doesn't have great length. He almost looks like a high school player, but the guy can flat out shoot it, and he really knows how to play. And he was one of the best players in college basketball this year.
Yeah, like that's what I was going to say. Like, again, back to these teams that have the luxury of all of these like big, long players already. Like the Warriors don't have that. The Warriors have too many of these small, tiny guards that can't play defense. But like when I look at the best players available, like outside of Filipowski, the guys just that I know from college that like, immediately I'm like, oh, I bet that guy is going to be a good player in the NBA. But I'm like, that wouldn't work on the Warriors. Like Tyler Kolek. I mean, I'm sure that would be Steve Kerr's wet dream to have that. That guy's such a smart, like he could totally be like a Goran Dragic type dude. But it's like they can't draft another 6'1" guard that isn't great at defense.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite guys left in the draft is Jamal Shed.
Who I was going to say. Yeah,
and he talk about one of the winningest players in college basketball. Jamal Shed at Houston went 120-18 in his college career. He's got great intensity on the defensive end. He's a passer. He's not a selfish player. He's a very good competitive guy, but he's only 6 feet. He's not a great shooter. He's only 6 feet tall. But a lot of people love the intangibles. Some people are comparing him to Jose Alvarado for Pelicans or TJ McConnell.
I mean, honestly, like, he's going to have a place in the league. I mean, I guess who he kind of reminds me of a little bit is Javon Carter. And like
that's a good one who played at West Virginia.
And like Javon Carter's been a valuable guy on teams. Like he still is kind of bouncing around, but he really has been a valuable guy. He's tough.
He's a tough point guard who is really, really strong and knows how to play. But he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he's a tough, he'll D you up, he'll challenge you. Yeah, and he's floated around to a few teams, but he's also played a pretty decent role. I'll tell you the other guy, Kashad Johnson from Arizona, who's a Bay Area kid. If you're talking about a dunking runner, this guy is 6'6", 230 and just can, 5th-year senior. So he's a veteran. He's kind of an undersized 4. But man, I mean, talk about a guy who can run and jam, and he's fun to watch. I mean, if you want to see somebody fill a wing with some power, he is. And he's a good player.
now like taking Arizona guys also, it's kind of like getting guys from Gonzaga. Like they know how to play within a system, like an NBA type system, which is nice.
Where are you on Bronny?
Oh my God.
I mean, Bronny James, a lot of people thought, my kid was like, the Lakers are going to take him in the first round. I'm like, if they take him, it's going to be in round 2. They list him at 6'2". I think he's probably closer to 6 feet. But he went to Chicago and he showed that he's an explosive athlete. I mean, he tested well at Chicago.
Yeah, he tested well. I mean, at the end of the day, though,
he averaged 4 points a game for SC. Yeah. 4.
I think I was just texting someone about this. Let me see what were his splits. They're truly shocking. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So he's 6'1" without shoes. He averaged 4.8 points per game on 36.6% shooting from the field.
Right.
Not from 3-point.
Not from 3.
From the field. And 26.7% from 3-point. And he was a collegiate role player who was maybe the 3rd best guard on USC. A USC team that, while talented, missed the tournament. So, like, what are we even talking about here? Like, honestly, like, I mean, I've joked about this, but like, I would love to see like a pay-per-view match, like Bronny versus Caitlin Clark on like one-on-one. Like,
people have been comparing Bronny to Caitlin Clark. It's like, people are like, "Oh, wouldn't you want him on your team with all of those social media hit?" What? How does that help me? How does it help me to have somebody who's got 250,000 followers on IG? How am I being helped there?
You.
I'll tell you, there are a couple sleeper players though late in this draft. Zion Pullen from Florida is from the Bay Area, right? He's a point guard for Florida who shot 45% from 3 and like 88% from the foul line, and he's pretty strong as a point guard. I mean, let's just say he could come into the league and improve his shooting like most guys do. What if you had a guy who could shoot 46% from 3 and 90% from the foul line? It's pretty, that's a pretty efficient basketball player right there.
100%.
I'll tell you a couple other guys that I really love. And to me, this is where 52 is really interesting because all these guys are rated lower than 52. Okay. And yet they're supposedly on the board when Golden State picks later tomorrow. Babacar Sane. I don't know if you've heard of Babacar Sane. Rye, you have to YouTube this guy. Okay. He's 6'7", 240, 7'2" wingspan. He came out of NBA Africa, right? NBA's got the NBA Africa Academy.
Okay.
This guy is from Senegal, and he's a power forward at 6'7", 240 with a 7'2" wingspan. There's a little bit of Giannis there. There's a little bit of Kuminga there. I mean, this guy has got length and explosiveness that is crazy, like crazy to watch. Now, the weakness is they say he's got average skill level. There's no question. I mean, he needs coaching. He needs feel. His decision-making, his feel, his skill, it's all not there, right? I mean, this guy is going to struggle. He needs time in the G League. But we're talking about a guy, Rye, who's got broad shoulders, 6'7", 240, 7'2" wingspan, shredded. This guy's absolutely shredded. Highlight reel caliber leaping ability. This guy is amazing. Amazing. They say his growth from last season in the G League, from his time in the NBA Academy in Africa, is encouraging because a lot of teams feel like his upside is tremendous. So I love this guy. I mean, Babacar Sane. I mean, if you watch this guy now, this guy's raw, really raw. But this might be if I say to you, is Jonathan Kuminga the best athlete in the NBA? Do you think, if it's not Jonathan Kuminga, who is the best athlete in the NBA?
He's whatever. He's in that final tier with like Anthony Edwards and
right. Well, this guy Babacar Sane is a Kuminga type athlete. Crazy kid.
Give me that. If they don't trade up and they just have their pick at 52, like, I mean, hell, like
that's the guy.
I'd rather have Babacar or whatever than Smiley pick.
Oh,
give me somebody like some random dude who maybe he can go to the G League and maybe will turn into something.
Two other guys you got to remember tomorrow. One is you may have heard of Jermaine Cousinard for Oregon.
That's hilarious. I have a tab opened up with him. I was going deep into the things, and I was going to ask you, like, look, like Jermaine Cousinard, like, if we're talking
kind
about
of like a Gilbert Arenas, he's kind of like a Gilbert Arenas body. He's like 6'4", but just really strong, really long arms. This guy had 72 points combined against South Carolina and Creighton in the NC2A tourney.
He was the best player I saw in.
He's old. He's a little older. He's 25.
He's 25. Like, so is Dalton Connect. Like,
yeah.
A lot of these guys. That's where I'm like, I mean, I just don't see, like, that's what's crazy. I don't see that much difference between Cousinard and like guys that are getting taken like 16, and he's like ranked like 70.
Right. I'll tell you the other guy you absolutely have to watch. And I saw this guy the other night, and I was like, oh my God. There's a point guard for UAB in this draft. His name's Eric Gaines. He's 6 feet, 148 pounds. They list him as an electric athlete with rare speed and explosiveness. I mean, this guy at 6 feet is one. I mean, this is a small guy, right? 6 feet, rail thin. But he went to, they weighed him at the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. And the guy, I guess, has had turnovers, and he only shoots 28% from three, and some of his analytics are not incredible, not great. But this is one of the greatest athletes that I've seen come into the league in a long time. This guy has got what this kid's got. They don't teach. You know what I mean?
Really?
He doesn't have good size, doesn't have good frame, isn't a particularly good shooter. But man, you would want this guy on your G League team. Because 2 years, this guy's going to win the slam dunk contest in the NBA. I mean, this guy. So he's vertical too. This guy cocks it back and throws it down, as Larry Beal used to say, with authority. I mean, this guy is ridiculous. Eric Gaines, and he's liquid. He's liquid. He's super fast. You can't stay in front of him. Now he can't stay in front of you. You know, he's not going to guard anybody. But I mean, if you're just looking for a super athlete who you might be able to, 2 years from now, you might look up and say, wow, we drafted this guy.
Like next Monte Ellis or something.
Yeah. Something like that.
I've got one more guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just cause you brought up Cousinard, how about the center from Oregon? Like
Nafali Dante.
Yeah. That guy is a freak. He's
another guy. I mean, you're talking 6'10", 260, 7'6" wingspan. I mean, 7'6" wingspan. That's crazy.
And like crazy athletic. Yeah.
He's, he is really something. He to me, he's a big physical inside presence. And
lob threat, all that kind of stuff.
He's interesting. Nafali Dante, he's a pretty spectacular athlete. I'll tell you another guy that I kind of like that's listed at the 36 best players still available. Tristan Newton from Connecticut. Yeah, Connecticut won the national championship, and obviously they've got a bunch of guys in this draft. But this guy's this guy's decent size. He's 6'3". He's just won back-to-back national championships. He's a really smart player. He's 23, so they're kind of questioning how much upside there is there. But I mean, this guy's a shot maker. He was a leader. He was a defender. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the shot needs some work. But Tristan Newton from Connecticut, hit some big shots for Hurley for sure. He's intriguing. He really is intriguing.
This is making me think, like, I mean, that's like 6 or 7 guys from Connecticut that are like in the mix. So does that mean that Moraga's own Aiden Mahaney is going to the league like next year or the year after? Because now he's like he's a starting guard on UConn.
He transferred?
Yeah, he transferred.
Oh my God, really?
I know. It's kind of
sucks.
a bummer, but I respect the fact that it's UConn. I know.
I really hate that trend. It's funny. I watched him against Gonzaga in their game late in the year, and they did a job shutting him down.
He slumped last year. Like there's just no. I mean, he was incredible.
He needs major strength.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say he doesn't have exceptional quickness. So he is a really good player, and he's a smart player, and he makes some really good decisions. But I think he needs. I mean, I don't know what's he going to be. I mean, he's young, right? Isn't he like a college sophomore?
This will be his junior year. I don't know if he might get an extra year for COVID. I don't know.
He's not quite an NBA athlete, but you know what? No. Neither is Spencer for Connecticut, and that guy just played incredible. I mean,
it'll be really interesting to see what Dan Hurley can get out of him. But it's really sad.
I think he's going to be good there. I think he's going to be good, don't you?
Oh, 100%. It's just really sad because I thought this St. Mary's team could actually make a run because they had also another. I forget which of the San Francisco colleges this guy came from. Maybe it was like Reardon or something like that. But there was
Mahaney?
this guy.
You talking about Mahaney?
No, no, not Mahaney. There was a guy, Zion Sensley, who was a top, he's like a top 40 guy, and he was committed to St. Mary's. And once Mahaney transferred, he decommitted. So they were gonna have real dudes this year. So it's kind of a bummer.
Were you surprised that the Lakers were so hot to trot on Hurley? I mean, that just seemed like such a bad fit. I mean, you're talking about some super anal, rules oriented Northeast, my way or the highway, kind of almost like a high school coach the way he coached his team. I can't even picture him communicating with an NBA team like that. If he had that level of intensity, they would be tired of this guy before Thanksgiving. I mean, I thought the Jeannie Buss badly wanted Hurley. I think, I'm not a big fan of JJ Redick, and I think Hurley would have been a better coach, but I think, Hurley in the NBA, I just think he's not cut out for the NBA. I think he's got too many rules, too intense, too in your face, too spazzy, too crazy, too maniacal for NBA. I mean, I know Eric Musselman had a little bit of that to him, but he also kind of burned out in the NBA and really had more success in the college game. I think Hurley's a great college coach. I don't think it would translate to the NBA. What do you think, though?
No, I mean, it really would depend on the right team. I mean, it didn't make any sense to me. It reminded me of, there was rumors, people were saying oh, LeBron should dip to the Knicks. And it's do you think that that's going to work out with Tom Thibodeau and LeBron James? There's no way. You buy in or it's all done.
LeBron. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
He'd be so sick of him immediately.
And so Thibodeau is a great coach, and what he's got going on right now with this team, again, I'm bringing him up, it's the perfect team to buy in. They're all Villanova dudes. They're all about it. It's that in that situation, it totally works. But he's also a guy that's wore out his welcome places. And I think Hurley would have been a similar thing. The only case for bringing in Hurley was Jeannie Buss. If Jeannie Buss made a decision all right, you know what? I'm kind of sick of being the Los Angeles LeBrons. I think it's time to maybe move on from LeBron. And then if you want to kind of start anew with Dan Hurley as the pillar of your organization, sure, maybe. Or Dan Hurley, if he was in OKC, with all those young dudes, I think they would buy in and that might work. But no, I mean, it's hilarious. It seems literally him and Woj, because apparently Woj wrote a book about his dad or something like that. So they're family friends. It seems Woj did him a solid, basically freaking out UConn, causing UConn to come with a better offer. That's kind of what it seems like.
On the Woj front, I noticed on McAfee, which is an ESPN-based show, that McAfee always has Shams on. And isn't Shams kind of the rival of Woj? Why you think there's something going on there? Why is McAfee, an ESPN guy, not having the ESPN insider, or like or it's something like it's kind of weird stuff going on. Like he'll have Shams on the show, and they'll be talking about a topic, and they'll show on the screen the report of like the newsmaker, and it's from Woj. So it's like ESPN producers are putting Woj breaking the story, but then McAfee's talking to Shams about it. I mean, what do you think's going on there? I mean, that just seems like ESPN's like got all kinds of backroom drama going on there.
ESPN, like the coverage tonight. Like, look, I like Bob Myers. He's good, but like, what are we doing here with this Stephen A thing? Like, I get that they've got to get their money out of Stephen A, so they just keep force feeding us Stephen A, even though what does Stephen A really contribute? They're literally going to give him like the equivalent of like a 2012 Supermax deal in the NBA. Like that's what's being talked about, and they're just like, all right, we're just going to use him everywhere, and it's like the whole network is coming down to just like Stephen A. And then they threw all that money at McAfee, and clearly they told him like, you get to do whatever you want to do. And it's just kind of those two guys and all these guys like Legler, who are just incredible guys who actually teach you about basketball or give you stuff that you want to hear. Like they're nowhere to be seen. I mean, I really good for SVP. I saw SVP was like kind of he was low-key nudging ESPN on air because he was like, wishing Legler good luck and basically like, look, like how could you not sign this guy? So ESPN is just kind of in the shitter. Like
they really, they don't know what they're doing. And they're so political, and they're so everything's Stephen A. Smith. You can see Stephen A. Smith is dying to weigh in on the presidential, election. I mean, I can picture that. We're going to have, Stephen A. Smith telling us who he would vote for. I can just picture it coming. Can't you? I mean, he's talk about a guy who, just thinks he's just like the world is waiting for Stephen A. Smith's evaluation of every major topic.
Oh, how when it's like every finals game, like he walks in, he practices that walk. Like he walks with so much swag and like the most ridiculous, outfits. I just not to like back because
And what's his calling card? He was like some bench warmer at Winston-Salem State or something.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, come on. I don't know. Nothing against him. He seems like a nice guy. I've interviewed him a couple times, and I really like Stephen A. And I think I like his whole deal, but his ego is just as he's succeeded. You can tell the ego on this man is just knows no bounds.
I mean, who's telling him no? Like, who around him's telling him no? Like, honestly, this is one of those things where it's like, if you asked me 3 years ago, would you want to be Stephen A. Smith in your life? I would have said 100% yes. That sounds sick. And now I'm like, you know what, man? Like, that guy just does not stop grinding. Like, all he does is like, he's just everywhere. And like, I don't know what he does with like the rest of his life, but I mean, good for him. I mean, he's a legend. But it's crazy. I mean, I need like a pay-per-view Skip Bayless, Stephen A. reunite. Because like both of those guys, they're like, they've had smoke blown up their ass at their respective networks now for years. I would love to just see like them to come back. Be great.
One other thing I got to ask you about, we're winding down here, but there was a rumor today, and obviously it didn't come to fruition, but the rumor was that the Warriors were going to trade Wiggins to the Cavs for the 20th pick in tonight's draft and Karis LeVert. Would you have made that trade? Would you have traded Wiggins for Karis LeVert in the 20th pick in the draft?
No, I wouldn't have.
Why? You're not a fan of LeVert, or I mean, to me, I'll drive Wiggins to the airport.
Yeah, I guess I'm
a big fan. I'm not a big fan of Wiggins because I don't like the fact that he kind of quit on the team to some degree and he prioritized his own situation over the team. And it's not, obviously your life comes first to some degree, but I don't know. It just seems. I also don't like the fact that when I watch him, I feel like I'm watching a guy with $200 million in the bank.
Yeah.
It feels like he's got no desire. Like you better hustle. Like the people that are yelling at Ben Simmons, you better improve your game. You better work on your game. Why? He's got like $300 million in the bank. Yeah, he's not going to have the career that I wanted him to have or that we all thought he was going to have. But how do you get in a guy's face and tell him the color of the sky in his world when he's got $250 million in the bank?
Yeah. I mean, I still think Wiggins is like an asset in the league. I mean, you look at like what Bridges fetched and like what OG's getting paid, like obviously Wiggins' value has dropped a lot from that. But at the same time, like his contract isn't too bad. It's not too bad for a guy who is like, for example, if you put him on Dallas, now we're talking about maybe competing like versus the Celtics this year. Like if there are certain teams where like I feel like Wiggins would fit in really well. And also, I just don't think that the style of play this year, like the ball really has to be moving around for Wiggins to be like an effective player. I didn't really see that before, but
if you're Steve Kerr, you won a title with Wiggins averaging almost 9 rebounds per game.
Yeah.
Why can't you go up to him, put a finger right in his chest and say, I don't care about any other aspect. You rebound. And when you're done rebounding, rebound some more. And just say to him, hey, I want that rebounder. And it's like, have they said that to him and he just can't do it? Is he I mean, I don't know, because when he went to the glass in that final series against the Celtics, to me, that was the very, very, very best of Andrew Wiggins. And it was so obvious that why he was more valuable. He was more valuable because he's a 6'8" guy with long arms who's really athletic, who can, if he wants to focus on rebounding, he can be a very good rebounder. But it's like he only wanted to focus on rebounding for that one playoff run. They won the title. You would have thought he would have been like, you know what? This is the new me. I just need to rebound with a vengeance, and everything else I can play kind of, easy come, easy go, and, happy go lucky, which is kind of his vibe on the floor. It's kind of like hey, I'm going to fit in because I'm never really going to try to demand the ball or dominate shots or demand a certain amount of looks. I'm just going to kind of run up and down and kind of flow and blend. Why can't he just run up and down, and play the flow and bend to the team, but rebound? If he just was the rebounder that he was 2 years ago, I think his value in the eyes of the Warriors and their brass his value would be considerably higher than where it is right now if he would just rebound. But he doesn't. He shows no desire at all to rebound.
I like what Woodpit 420 said. He said a lot of it's tied to his shot. If his shot isn't falling, he shrinks. It's true. I mean,
that's a good point.
He does extra disappear. Like when his shot isn't going, especially like if he he has to do like a few of those ISO moves and just like bricks a three. Like it's almost like it's clearly something like psychological. Like he wants to be liked. So like when he's bricking on top of everything, like he just wants to like fade back more. And I don't know if this is too like over psychologizing, but I do think it definitely is. But I think that I think Iguodala being there and like I was saying earlier, like with Kerr, like I don't think Kerr's breathing life into Wiggins, but I think Iguodala was. And when even though Iguodala wasn't playing for shit, like he really was like in Wiggins' ear like the whole time, like making sure that guy was locked in and playing defense and all this stuff. And Kerr, the guys, he has so many troublemakers that then he has the guys that just don't really, they won't say anything. They're a little more reserved. And he kind of just like lets them be. He just kind of lets them be. And that's with Moody and with Wiggins. Like, I don't know why Kerr isn't like in like Moody. Like, why isn't he like trying to like really big up Moody? I don't know.
I agree. He should be firing up Moody, and it's weird. Moses Moody, I think, is an easygoing young guy. And unfortunately, I think the Warriors have used his easygoing demeanor against him because 100%. They know he's a chill, low-key, professional, very nice person. So it's like, and they know that if they play Klay Thompson, and, Klay's going to be happy. But if they sit Klay Thompson for Moody, Klay's going to be pissed off. But if they sit Moody for Klay, Moody's going to be a pro. So they keep sitting Moody for Klay. I really believe his kind of I'll do whatever you want approach has actually worked against him. If he was like a little bit more like, I'm the man up in this bitch. You put me out there and I deserve X number of minutes, I think he'd get more minutes. And I think they would acquiesce, but because he's so easygoing, because he's so, hey man, whatever works here, I think he gets aced out. He gets absolutely aced out because he's willing to sit and not complain.
It's honestly, it's a good life lesson. Cause like I feel like I'd want like my kid to be like Moody, like the guy that just fits in and he's not going to cause any trouble and be just so coachable and ready to go. But at the same time, like, squeaky wheel does get the grease, and like Steve Kerr's in that coaching staff and all that, like they're human. And, if Kuminga is, putting stuff out into the media and like actually like telling Kerr off a little bit and going around the locker room and like spreading a little bit of dissent, like, look, immediately, like he got more minutes. All of a sudden he started starting over Wiggins. And that was another thing. Like, I think it was like very easy for him to like, he's like, oh, well, I know Wiggins won't mind. So even if this permanently affects Wiggins' confidence for being moved to the bench here and ruins him for the season, like that's okay. That's okay. We'll put Kuminga there. And Moody's the same way. So yeah.
And and I don't think we're guessing, but we're right.
Oh,
we're right. Well, we're guessing, but we have no sources, but we watch this team enough. We know. A couple last ones. Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. Where are you on Jimmy Butler? He's 35. He's another name that has been tied to Golden State. Miami probably wants to move him. I don't want to move Kuminga to get Jimmy Butler. If I could get Kuminga, or if I could get Jimmy Butler without moving Kuminga, that I don't mind having Jimmy Butler. I like how he's tough, and he's volatile, but he's tough. He's a good two-way player. What do you think? Is Jimmy Butler the guy to try to add to this mix, or do you think it's going to definitely cost Kuminga?
Jimmy Butler. Well, first of all, Jimmy Butler and Draymond. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
that would be very interesting. I mean, Draymond. I honestly like that. There will be fights if that's the team. You
could charge money to watch those fights. I mean,
I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to give up Kuminga. This is the difference. I wouldn't give up Kuminga for him because even though I believe that at the end of the day, come playoffs, if you have Jimmy Butler on your team, on this Warriors team, like that's okay. Even if Kuminga's not there, like Jimmy Butler's like one of the 6 best playoff guys, and you have another one of the 3 or 4 in Curry. So like that, they actually could make a run. But at this point, the West is so damn deep that they need a guy that's going to be there for a majority of the regular season. Like they need to actually worry about the regular season, and like they just can't end up in the play-in again. And Jimmy Butler, like he's going to miss time. It's going to happen. I mean, it scares me a little bit about Paul George as well, but Paul George did have his healthiest season last year, which is a total jinx, but I don't know.
Would you make this trade? I saw it worked on the trade machine. And to me, I was looking for homes for Wiggins because I'm like, who's going to want Wiggins? I'm thinking maybe Mike Brown because he did play good defense for Mike Brown. Would you trade Wiggins to Sacramento for Herder, Davion Mitchell, and Duarte? That works on the trade machine.
What was the first name?
Herder. So the redheaded kid Herder plus Davion Mitchell, who's not a good shooter, but he's a pretty good defender. He's a backup guard. And then Duarte, who you remember the night that Duarte got drafted in the first round in front of Moody?
Oh, I do.
Joe Lacob pounded the table. He was pissed. He wanted Kuminga at 7 and Duarte at 14. And Duarte went to Indiana, and he pounded the table, and the Warriors took Moody instead. But I think Joe likes Duarte.
That's interesting because that would be. Herter can do some of what Klay does, legitimately. And Davion Mitchell I just love him. And he's honestly, he's in a weird spot, and I've wanted to trade for him for a really long time, but it just seems like the Kings and the Warriors don't really do trades. But Davion Mitchell, he would be so good, and he would be honestly GP insurance. And I don't know. I love Davion. And then Duarte, I also love. So those are 3 guys that would, at the very least, all of a sudden, that bench is looking nice. That even if that was the first 3 coming off your bench, that would be real nice. And then at that point, it's I don't know, maybe you do trade Kuminga for Paul George. And it's kind of you got a little bench there. You get Paul George. I don't hate that.
Let me read the supers. I got one last question for you, and then we'll call it a night. Mark Graves says, Miss Ryan on YouTube. Good to see you back with Larry. No Warrior trade tonight. Well, not yet. We got this one from Ant Skellington. He says, Kyle Filipowski to the Warriors. Make it happen tomorrow.
How hard can it really be? If they actually wanted him, there were deals today. What was that crazy ass deal?
For Denny Avdia, that one to Portland.
Oh, that was a weird one. But there was one trade that was a 2031 first round pick for an early first round pick. I think it was. Oh, you know what? I think it was Dillingham. I think it was for Dillingham. I think the Timberwolves.
I was making chicken fried rice for my kid tonight, so I had one eye on the early part of the draft, and I was flipping back and forth to the Giants game as well. Giants got the win tonight as well. So I didn't see the beginning of the draft, but yeah, to me, this draft was really sleepy. This is the sleepiest draft in the lottery of my lifetime. We talk about Anthony Bennett. That draft was awesome compared to this draft. Purvis Ellison, that draft was spectacular. That was the dream team revisited compared to these guys. But to me, there's still good players available tomorrow, which is kind of, it's ironic that you'd have kind of a terrible lottery, but still good players available. MF says, damn, love watching Elliot Ramos. Good to see. He was playing tonight. I saw Matos went deep. YouTube user, Larry, your Dubs aren't getting Lauri Markkanen. Lauri legend. A boy can dream, though. I would love Markkanen. I think it would take Kuminga and more to get Markkanen. But Markkanen is interesting because you're talking about a 6'10" guy who can really shoot the ball. So there's a lot to like there for sure. All right, last one. Let's finish on a football note. You were with me 2 years ago when we were covering the Niners on a day-to-day basis. And then not this year. I did it this year without you, and we missed seeing you there. But I gotta wonder, and I've wanted to ask you this, and we've done streams together, but it's never been the right time. You were there right next to me when I was doing those first interviews of Brock Purdy, and when I was sitting there telling you endlessly, because you were the only person within arm's length of me, how good Brock Purdy was going to be. Remember, I kept Brock Purdy's going to be this, Brock Purdy's going to be that, and I'm sure at some point you're probably like, "Fuck, I wish he would stop talking about Brock Purdy." But what was it like for you to be there in those early in the locker room in 2022? In it, we're talking about preseason and week 1, week 2, when I'm talking to Purdy, you're talking to Purdy, we're in the corner of the locker room. We could have done 10 interviews with him because nobody wanted to interview him. Nobody wanted to talk to him at all. And here he is a couple years later, and he's on the verge, they say, now we'll see, of making $60 million a year or more. And he's literally, I thought he was going to be good. I told you that, but he's even better. He's even better than I thought he was going to be. What's it like for you as somebody who went into the locker room and saw those interviews and stood there next to him? You talked to Brock, but it was before he was Brock. And now you're talking about one of the NFL's biggest stars and a guy that I think this year, if you talk to George Kittle or any of the dudes around the Niners, they're just like, Brock has taken it to a totally different level. And why wouldn't he, right? He's hurt. He was hurt last year. Now he's healthy. He's practicing. He's working on his body. He's bigger, stronger, smarter. I think he's primed for his career year. And the question that I'm wondering about, and I've brought it up a couple times in the last couple weeks on these streams, I'm kind of wondering if Brock Purdy's improvement alone is enough to vault the Niners from where they're at to, the top of the heap, Super Bowl champions, because he's definitely their quarterback and he's definitely getting better. And the quarterback means so much that if the Niners quarterback gets better, is that enough, despite maybe some of the other, maybe a regression on the roster, for them to beat Kansas City and climb to the top of the mountain? But what's it been like for you to watch the emergence of Brock Purdy? And I'm sure you've had people in your inner circle mention to you, hey, you covered this team last year when this guy was a rookie. What did you think of him? What was he like to talk to? I mean, do people ask you about Purdy and covering him? And what's it been like for you to watch him evolve to be what he is today?
Yeah, it is pretty surreal. For some reason, it doesn't feel that surreal, but like, I guess when you were putting it like that, yeah, it is pretty insane, actually. I mean, that year, it was just like all anyone wanted to talk about was, and with venom, was Jimmy versus Trey. That was all anything was. Heated arguments, nonstop. Jimmy versus Trey, Jimmy versus Trey. And the interesting thing was, like, I'm not like, I would never profess to be like, oh my God, like, oh, I'm so good at looking at and evaluating talent. But like watching, like, it was just, if you were objective about it, like, and granted, he was going against like the third string, but I mean, Trey Lance was all over the place. Like, he would do some stuff that was exciting. He would break off runs against no defense, when there was no defenders and stuff like that. And the occasional like long ball, like it seemed like his like deep passes were more accurate. But like, Purdy was just kind of like putting it in work. Like, he just looked super comfortable, like from jump.
Right.
And like, it just looked like he just looked like a dude, and he looked like pretty fast and all this stuff. So like, I honestly didn't really even know what to like do with that information, because like, I mean, it's against third stringers, and like, this is my first time ever at like an NFL camp. So I'm like, I don't know. But like, I do remember there was that like funny thing we had to do, like just the one time for Ollie, where we went to Panera Bread. And it was like, for some reason, like we had to like write like a scout or like our like scouting reports or whatever for like the magazine. And we were like scrambling to get it done. And like, I was like writing just like a bunch of bullshit, like for the, like I was just stuff that was off the top of my head. Right. But like when it came down to like writing, like what I thought about Brock Purdy, like I was like looking back at it the other day, and like I put like he looks like he would be like a low end starter in the league. Like,
right.
He looked like an NFL guy. Like, I don't. So, it was surreal. And then it was like the season was over when Trey went down, and then the season, and then hope, and then season over again when Jimmy goes down. And I remember like the majority of those streams we were doing, it was like, are we like in a Disney movie? Like, what the hell is happening?
What's going on?
Like,
I remember talking to you as we were walking from the parking lot into the Niner facility on the Tuesday after the Miami game. And I remember saying to you, man, this is going to be interesting, Rye. We're going to walk into this room, and the vibe in this room is either going to be like death warmed over because they lost their starting quarterback and they think their chances of winning the Super Bowl are considerably damaged because of it, or we're going to see how much confidence they have in this kid, and it could be like business as usual, and they just believe in this kid. And man, we walked into that room, and sure enough, it was business as usual. And these guys were like, "Yeah, we and guys that we talked to were like, yeah, we kind of knew when we saw this guy, back in training camp that he really had a lot of talent, and still didn't think that he was going to do what he did, over the weekend to the Dolphins. But, there's a lot of people in this room that have a lot of belief in Brock Purdy. It was amazing to me because we walked into that room and it was that Tuesday, and I was thinking, you know what? These guys might be bummed out. Instead, it was almost like nothing had happened. Like Jimmy wasn't the starter, and this guy wasn't the third string rookie backup. It was just like they're two quarterbacks on the team, and it's like, yeah, we lost our number one guy, but we got this guy, and we're gonna keep rolling. And I at the time I remember thinking to myself, these guys, and even though I like Brock, I was thinking to myself, these guys are gotta be just kind of carrying this out. They can't really believe in this kid that much. Sure enough, they did. I mean, and we didn't know because I didn't know. I didn't know how much these guys believed in him, but I don't know if it was the belief that they had in preseason or just the way he played against the Dolphins, or just the fact that maybe Shanahan spoke to them and said, hey, this is the only shot we got is with this kid, so we all better align behind him. I don't know, but there was no like, we're cooked. We got this rookie. We're done. No, it was none of that.
Well, that's
pretty staggering, really.
And that's where and honestly, not to throw shots, but I was kind of surprised with other people that were covering the team, why they kind of didn't pick up on this. But I mean, the great benefit that we had was right after Trey got injured, we were able to go into the locker room and be around the guys when Trey got injured. And we saw that it was it didn't skip a beat, and everybody was just as confident.
But they had Jimmy sitting there, and Jimmy had already gone to a Super Bowl.
Yes, it was just as confident, to the point where actually there was some people that were saying, talking about how
our offense is back.
Well, that people were talking about that, but there were people talking about I was in the locker room and everyone seemed really happy for it to be Jimmy now, and basically there's part of the locker room that loves Jimmy, and there's division in the locker room. People were trying to build that narrative, which is total horseshit the whole time. Really, in reality, they were just really comfortable with Jimmy because they've done it with Jimmy before.
Yeah. And Jimmy they personally like Jimmy. I mean, people didn't or weren't around Jimmy like we were, but Jimmy was a very chill. Jimmy's like the cool kid in school that everybody likes.
He's just one of the guys. He doesn't put himself above anyone. And so that was the double combination with when Jimmy got hurt, which was obviously that was just, it was heartbreaking. It didn't skip it was just like when Trey went down. It was the same thing.
Yeah.
And also the fact that Brock's also just a dude. He's similar to Jimmy. He's got that kind of it factor. But we're also he makes everyone feel like he's just one of the guys.
Right.
And then I just remember that was a new level of confidence where it just seemed okay, I think it's kind of okay to start throwing some Brock Purdy takes out there, some really strong ones.
I remember sitting in the press box with you and Caleb from the Niners, and
oh my God, there goes the season.
And you guys, and Caleb's like, hey, your boy's in there, because he knew I'd been touting Purdy. And I said, what? Because I knew that Jimmy went down, but I didn't know that Jimmy, remember, because he went down, but then we didn't know he was seriously hurt until they brought the cart. Remember, obviously he told them when he got back to the bench, hey man, this is serious, because he wasn't carted off the field.
Yeah.
He walked off the field, didn't he? Or was carried off the field or whatever, but he was carted back to the locker room. And once the cart came, and it was oh, he's done. And I remember Caleb looking at me going, hey, your boy's in there. And I looked up, and there was Brock Purdy was trotting in there. And, it's funny. I was a little bit cocky and a little bit just kind of having fun with it. And I turned to him and I said, the 49ers just got a whole lot better at quarterback. And there were people in the press box in the first row who literally, who said that? like, what the hell? Who's saying this preposterous thing? So funny. And the rest, of course, he ran the table, and now he's the Niners quarterback and on the verge of making millions of dollars. Rye, how's the channel going, man? What can we promote for you? When are you going live again next? How's things going down in Southern Cal? You enjoying yourself down there?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying myself. As you can see, I spent a little bit too long at the beach this weekend. My nose is absolutely toasted.
We had a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer reference earlier.
I saw that. My whole body too. Like
What beach? What beach did you go to?
In the sun. I said this year was going to be the year of sunscreen. It's just like the Santa Monica, one of the Santa Monica beaches.
What is the best? It was a great LA
time,
beach?
But
best honestly, beach in LA. I love Redondo. I love Malibu. They're quite different, but a lot of people. Huntington, Laguna. Where what do you Venice? I mean, you're down there. You probably have the scouting report. If you have one day, you can go to the beach in Southern Cal. You can go to any beach, and it's equally convenient. Well, what's your beach of choice?
So I'm still a little bit of a rookie here. But I would say like if I'm trying to like go like have a chill one where like maybe I can like even like maybe bring my dog even though it's illegal, like that kind of thing. Definitely like go Pacific Palisades, probably like the most beautiful, not that many people. And then if I'm trying to just
north
have
or south?
Shoot, I don't.
Okay.
The younger generation doesn't understand directions. Or
okay, all right. How is Ringo doing, by the way?
Oh, he's still hanging in there. He's getting old, but like
well?
he's killing it. He's loving living around here.
Great dog.
Yeah. So and then I mean Venice is fun. Like I go play volleyball there probably like every other Sunday. So like that's kind of like a fun one for like activities. I mean,
is that the beach where there's like guys lifting weights and stuff?
Yeah. And there's like outdoor hoops and like, I mean, there's like some pretty competitive basketball going on there.
Is that kind of that's probably a total scene though, huh?
It is. It's just a little, I mean, it can be like a little tough. Like there's a lot of like homeless people and stuff like that, which is like whatever, but it,
2024, it's the cities in America in 2024.
Exactly. So yeah, but like I finally, I've got a job now. So like, as far as the channel goes, like I will get going on it at some point. I'm thinking probably this summer. I just wanted to kind of take a break.
Yeah.
Like get it kind of away from it and like kind of really figure out like, what do I really want to do with this sort of thing? So, now I'm working again. So that's nice. And yeah, I got to figure something out because this is fun, man. I love being back, and I love seeing some of the old people in the chats.
Oh yeah, and we've been having a lot of fun. It's funny that first year we talked a lot of Giants baseball. Then I started really doing more stuff with the bigger audiences, right?
Like so 3 hours after like every Giants game, like that was.
I mean, we worked hard and long, but there were some long hours there. There were some, and Danny still does a lot of Giants, of Giants.
I love,
but what happens for me is I just get too negative. I get too negative on the Giants, so it's like I gotta wait until the Giants are going good. So it's like, unfortunately, that's a lot of waiting. That's a lot of waiting because the Giants, it's a Woodpit 420 says, now Dan is on Giants duty. Yeah.
I love it though. Like I want him to be like the Grant Cohn of the San Francisco Giants.
Oh, he would be if they would just let him in the room.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
And he would ask the question that everybody would just be like, oh, but it's a good question.
Yeah, I wonder if Lowell Cohn would legally adopt him.
Next time I see Lowell, I'll say, Lowell, have you thought about adopting my good friend Dan Coachemilio? Rye, good stuff, man. Good conversation about the NBA draft tomorrow. Of course, tomorrow night we're going to tomorrow afternoon, as we talked about. So it's going to be a 1 o'clock. It's you said 4 o'clock Eastern, so it's 1 o'clock Pacific, right?
Yes, 4 o'clock. You know what? I'm not sure I'm going to be able to be on it now that I have a deposition tomorrow for a car accident that I was in. I guess, it's about 3 years ago.
Oh
But
my gosh.
apparently,
do you even remember the details?
like barely. But it was like one of those things where like, State Farm like decided like 55% like in the favor of this guy, the other guy. And
Right.
then
Oh, no.
now he's like claiming like retroactively, like he's like claiming that he was injured. So like I respect the hustle, but like so now I have to show up.
Says, I missed the three amigos, Larry, Ryan, Dan. Yeah, seriously. We'll make sure that we do the three of us on some streams definitely throughout the year. And then Rye, of course, has been joining us a lot during the football season for our post-game Niners, and we hopefully we can do more of that this year as well. But good stuff. And tomorrow night, by the way, we were going to have Frank on tonight, Frank Red and Carl Foster, Danny, Baller's up in Tahoe, so it wasn't a good weekend for Baller. Danny's is probably right now doing his own Giants thing. Carl, I guess my email to Carl didn't get there, but hopefully Carl tomorrow and definitely Red tomorrow will get his thoughts on. We'll do a little bit more basketball tomorrow, just kind of rehashing. I'm hoping that tomorrow the Warriors will make a pick, maybe make a trade or two, and we'll actually have something to talk about. So that coming up tomorrow, and Dieter's going to join us tomorrow night as well for our Thursday night hit. But good stuff, man. Right, good to see you, and we wish you nothing but the best. And we'll leave you with the final word before we call it quits. And also thanks to our sponsors, Underdog Fantasy, definitely thanks to them. Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, and of course, Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. But Rye, I'll give you the final word. We talked a little football, we talked a lot of basketball tonight. It was an uneventful NBA draft, but we had some good dialogue tonight. What's your final thought before we bolt for the door?
I guess, it's just a plea to the Warriors. It's really sad it's come to this, but like, just do something interesting. Just be interesting this year. Like, do something, mix it up, do something. Don't run it back. Like that's going to bum everyone out. Don't
run it back. You're saying
don't run it back. I mean, we see what's happening with the Giants. Like, let's all be realistic. That's what's going to happen to the Warriors probably when Steph and all of them are gone. Like, it's going to be a drought, and we're all going to be really bummed out. So while you still have these guys, like, just do something interesting. Screw it. Trade for Paul George. Trade for KD. Do whatever you got to do. Just make it interesting.
Shake it up. Make it interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. The NBA has changed the CBA, and they've made so many changes. They've plugged all these loopholes. You can't buy second round picks. And, it's a lot of these things are made to make sure the Warriors don't get an extra player here or there. So much of the new CBA just reeks of anti-Joe Lacob. It's going to be very, very challenging. And all I would say to the Warriors and Joe, if Joe were sitting here and he said, what do you think? You talk about sports for a living. Give me your quick thought. I would just say, Joe, you didn't get here with shortcuts. You got here by drafting your way to get here. You drafted Steph. You drafted Klay. You drafted Harrison Barnes. You drafted Draymond Green. You drafted Festus Ezeli. Everybody talks endlessly about the pursuit of Kevin Durant, but the reality is you drafted your talent, and the young talent that you have currently on your roster, TJD, Podziemski, Kuminga, you drafted your talent again, and there will be no shortcuts. So don't try to do some shortcut. I would say focus on the same thing that the same thing that got you here. You made amazing picks in the draft, and you did a series of them in a row, and you looked up and suddenly you were a title contender and you won 4 rings. Well, guess what? If it's going to happen again, you're going to have to probably hit in the second round again. And you're probably going to have to find guys that other people don't find. And that means starting tomorrow, you got to pick somebody at 52 that is going to be in your rotation. And that's hard to do, man. That is hard to do, to pick a guy at 52 that's going to be in your rotation. So all I would say to Joe is you didn't get here by taking shortcuts. You're not going to get back here by taking shortcuts. You got here by winning in the draft. And if you're getting here again, you're going to have to win in the draft. Simple as that. For Rye, I'm Larry. Have a great night, everybody. And thanks for checking out the Krueger Show. Until next time, peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.